content as a service, I've seen so many different content agencies. There's definitely a niche of people where their next bit of content is a podcast, and they absolutely should outsource chunks of it. And you have to figure out who that is and what is it.
In fact,
for sure,
I would prefer it to be quarterly, to be honest.
For sure. But and actually back to your question of like what kind of niche, like what kind of services should you offer? I don't know, right? Some services might be like, I need the full stack. I'm just not going to touch this. Others might be like, right? I need half the stack. I want to do some myself and I want to not do others, right?
Yeah, the idea is, right, like here's the menu. Here's the podcast as a service menu. You can get the full thing, or you can pick and choose what you need.
It's always a great way to start out when you're building a business. You don't need to be overly prescriptive, especially if you're building an agency business, like a services business. If you're building software, you do need to be prescriptive. Software is a different animal, obviously lots of businesses are nowadays software businesses.
Very expensive too.
I mean, expensive. I mean, it depends who you are. You and I, we're not engineers. If you're an engineer, it's just like two weekends and you can build an app, you know, like it's, this is where like the founder fit thing matters, right? Like if you're not an engineer, you have a different path. If you are an engineer, you're probably overbuilding. You probably build way too much before you ship things to people, you know? So it's always about just, you know, this is where every time I do a podcast, I realize I'm being a little hypocritical because I'm like, listen, the advice, you can't listen to it. It's all platted. Like anything you hear that's not personal, you have to take with a grain of salt.
Yes.
Even us right now.
I agree.
Right. So if you're listening to this, you take it with a grain of salt, right? It's why day one exists, because you need to get past that platitude level advice. If you want to do it, if you're going to take your entrepreneurial journey seriously and you think you're getting a university online by going to Twitter, you're not. You're not. University is about sparring with your peers. University is about learning from professors. University is the experience. It's not the textbook, right? And so if you actually want the entrepreneurial university, back to this metaphor, right? That's what day one is built around, right? And we do content like this because we want to entertain you and we want to give you insights, but it's really just has to be the beginning. It has to be. We're not trying to solve everything. We know we're not. In some ways, we're actually doing a session with Will. This is like what's going to happen to Will, the rest of the cohort. It's going to be deep like this, deeper than this. We're going to get real with Will.
We're going to get into specifics, and I'll lay out numbers, and I'm going to curse out certain people. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be therapy. It's going to be detailed. It's going to be it's how it gets done. You know. So.
Oh, I already have ideas. Right? Like I know I had those. Like I said, I had two different lanes here, so they're completely different. Well, no, they still kind of tie into each other. So I'm going to try and work that out and figure it out. But
yep.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the fellowship. Have you ever had a podcaster like me do the fellowship? Am I I don't want to say one of a kind, but am I a dime a dozen, or am I
We've had a few other like creators, right? So guy came through the cohort at the end of last year who he's a chef and he's got a few 100,000 TikTok followers. Guy came through a while back who has over 1 million TikTok followers, and he talks about mental health. So we've had a few different creators, if you will, broadly, right? But not podcasts as a medium, right? Awesome. Plenty of people have been writing newsletters, a little less, some full-time. And again, it's kind of, to me, I think they're all like different mediums for the same idea, right?
Of course.
So yeah, there's definitely people who are using media as their business. And plenty of people doing services as their business, right? Like, so you're doing both, right? You're doing the media, you're doing the services. That's very standard inside of day one, alongside people building tech and SaaS and everything in between. So